There are moments in life that do not happen by accident. There are moments that are engineered by something far greater than the algorithm that placed this video in front of your eyes. You did not stumble here. You did not accidentally press play. Heaven, with all of its infinite intelligence and perfect timing, drew your attention to this exact place, at this exact moment, because there is something you need to hear that no one around you has been able to say to you. And what you are about to receive in the next few minutes is not just a message. It is a divine interruption. It is a pause that heaven itself has pressed into your day, your week, your season, because you are not who you think you are, and it is time you finally knew the truth. You have been walking through this world carrying a weight that most people around you cannot see and will never fully understand. You have smiled when you were breaking. You have shown up when everything inside you wanted to disappear. You have kept going when the road gave you every reasonable excuse to stop. And somewhere along the way, in the middle of all that surviving, you started to believe that maybe you were just ordinary. Maybe you were just another person trying to get through another day. Maybe the dreams you carry are too big, too wild, too far out of reach for someone like you. But listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you is the most important thing anyone has ever spoken over your life. You are not ordinary. You were never ordinary. And the fact that you have endured what you have endured without losing your soul is not weakness. It is one of the most profound demonstrations of divine strength this world has ever seen. You are a chosen one, not in the way the world uses that phrase lightly. Not as a motivational slogan or an empty affirmation written on a coffee cup. You are chosen in the ancient, sacred, intentional sense of the word. Before your name was ever spoken by a human voice, it was spoken in heaven. Before your parents ever laid eyes on you, God had already seen the full map of your life, every valley you would walk through, every mountain you would be asked to climb, every fire you would somehow walk out of without being consumed. And He chose you anyway. He chose you because of what He placed inside you. He chose you because the assignment attached to your life requires exactly the kind of spirit that you carry. There is something different about you, and deep down you have always felt it, even when you could not name it. Even when others tried to convince you that you were too much or not enough, there was something underneath all of that noise that refused to agree. That something is not pride. It is not arrogance. It is the quiet, unshakable knowing of a spirit that remembers where it came from. You carry a light, and that light does not belong to you in the way that a possession belongs to its owner. That light was given to you as a trust, as a responsibility, as a gift meant to move through you and into the lives of people who are still sitting in darkness, waiting for someone exactly like you to show up. But here is what the enemy of your destiny has been counting on. He has been counting on you staying confused about who you are. He has been counting on you measuring your worth by your circumstances, by your bank account, by the relationships that did not work out, by the doors that slammed in your face, by the seasons of silence when it felt like heaven itself had gone quiet. He has been counting on you shrinking. Because a chosen one who does not know they are chosen is no threat to darkness at all. A lion that believes it is a house cat will never roar. And you, beloved, were made to roar. Right now, if something inside you is stirring, if something in your chest is responding to these words, if there is a part of you that feels like this message was meant specifically for you, that is not your imagination. That is your spirit recognizing truth. That is the part of you that heaven has been trying to reach, the part of you that has been waiting for permission to wake up fully, to stop playing small, to stop apologizing for your existence, to stop waiting for someone else to validate what God already confirmed before you took your first breath. You have been through things that would have broken most people, and yet here you are, still standing, still seeking, still open enough to listen to a message like this one. Do you understand how remarkable that is? Do you understand that your survival alone is a testimony? That every single thing you have walked through has been preparing you for something you cannot yet see, but that is absolutely, undeniably real. This is the beginning of your awakening, not the beginning of a new you, because the real you has always been there, underneath the doubt, underneath the fear, underneath the years of being told you were not enough. This is the moment the real you starts to rise. This is the moment heaven gets to show you what it has always known about you. This is your time, not someone else's time, yours. If you feel that stirring right now, if you feel that something sacred is happening in this moment, I want you to pause and type the number 999 in the comments below. Let that be your declaration, your agreement with heaven, that you are ready to receive everything this message carries for you. Type 999 and let it stand as your yes to the destiny that has been waiting for you all along. Because you are not here by accident. You never were. And what is coming next in this message is going to show you just how deep that truth really goes. What you just declared by being here, by staying, by letting these words land in the deep places of your heart, is already shifting something in the atmosphere around your life. You may not feel it yet in your body. You may not see it yet in your circumstances. But in the realm where the real decisions about your life are made, something has moved. Something has responded to the posture of your spirit. And as we go deeper into what heaven wants you to understand about yourself today, I need you to stay open. Not just with your mind, but with every part of you that has ever dared to believe that your life was meant for something more than what you have seen so far. There is a story in Scripture that has been misunderstood for generations. Most people hear it and they see a battle. They see a giant. They see a sling and a stone and a boy who got lucky on the right day. But when you look at the life of David, not just the moment in the valley of Elah, but the entire arc of his journey from the forgotten fields of Bethlehem to the throne of Israel, you begin to see something that speaks directly to where you are standing right now. You begin to see yourself. David was not chosen because he was the strongest. He was not chosen because he was the most impressive. When the prophet Samuel came to the house of Jesse to anoint the next king of Israel, every single one of David's brothers was presented first. They were taller, older, more experienced, more visible. They looked like kings. They carried themselves like men who expected to be selected. And one by one, God said no. Not this one, not this one, not this one. And Samuel, confused and searching, finally asked if there were any more sons. Jesse almost hesitated before he mentioned David, almost as if the youngest, the one out in the fields tending sheep, the one no one had even thought to call in from his post, was not even worth considering. He was the afterthought, the overlooked one, the one who did not make the guest list for his own destiny moment. Does that sound familiar to you? Have you ever been the one not called into the room? Have you ever watched others receive recognition, opportunity, and open doors while you stood in the background doing the quiet, faithful, unglamorous work of simply being who you were made to be? Have you ever felt like the world forgot to include you in its plans? If so, then you need to understand something about David's story. That changes everything. God had not forgotten him. God had never forgotten him. In fact, the very place where David had been left, the fields, the solitude, the long hours of watching over sheep with nothing but the sky above him and the sound of his own voice lifted in worship, that was not his punishment. That was his preparation. Every giant he would ever face in front of a nation, he had already faced alone in those fields. Every victory that would one day be celebrated by thousands had already been practiced in secret, in obscurity, in the place where no one was watching except God. And God was watching. God is always watching the ones he has chosen, especially in their hidden seasons, especially in the seasons that feel like abandonment, especially in the quiet years that feel like nothing is happening, but where everything is actually being built inside you that you will need for what comes next. This is what the Word of God declares over people like you and like David. 1 Samuel 16:7 says this, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." That verse is not just a comfort. It is a revelation. It is heaven pulling back the curtain and showing you how the economy of divine selection actually works. You have been measuring yourself by the wrong standard. You have been comparing your insides to everyone else's outsides. You have been looking at what is visible and drawing conclusions about what is possible. But God has never once evaluated you based on what the world can see. He has been looking at something far deeper. He has been looking at the thing inside you that keeps getting back up. He has been looking at the part of you that still believes even when belief costs you something. He has been looking at the fire in your spirit that refuses to go out no matter how many times the winds of life have tried to blow it down. David was anointed that day not because of what he had accomplished, but because of what God saw in him that had not yet been expressed. He was anointed for a future that had not yet arrived, for a throne he could not yet see, for a purpose that was so much larger than anything he had dared to dream in those quiet fields. And the anointing did not immediately change his circumstances. He went back to his sheep after being anointed king. He went back to the ordinary before the extraordinary was revealed. He carried the oil of his calling in a season that still looked like limitation. And he remained faithful. He remained himself. He kept playing his harp, kept tending his flock, kept developing the inner world that would eventually sustain the outer life he was being prepared to lead. You are in that place right now. You are carrying something that has not yet fully manifested in your visible world. You are anointed for something your current circumstances have not yet caught up to. And just like David, the preparation you are in right now, as uncomfortable and as confusing as it may feel, is not a sign that God has forgotten you. It is a sign that He is taking your assignment so seriously that He will not release you into it before you are fully ready to carry it without being crushed by it. The weight of your calling requires a certain kind of inner strength, and that strength is not built in the spotlight. It is built in the secret place. It is built in the moments of faithfulness that no one applauds. It is built in the long nights and the unanswered questions and the seasons of trusting when trusting feels like foolishness. David built it in the fields, and you have been building it in your own version of those same fields, in every season that tested you, in every moment you chose to keep going when stopping would have been so much easier. You are more prepared than you know. You are further along than you feel, and what God has placed inside you is not diminished by the difficulty of the road you have walked. If anything, the road has refined it. The pressure has purified it. And the you that is emerging from this season is carrying something that the you who started this journey could never have held. David did not become the man who could carry a kingdom by avoiding the hard places. He became that man by moving through them with his spirit intact, with his worship alive, with his connection to something greater than himself, never fully severed even in the moments when everything around him was falling apart. And that is exactly what you have been doing. Maybe you did not have a name for it. Maybe you did not recognize it as spiritual discipline or divine preparation. But every time you chose faith over fear, every time you got up off the floor when the weight of life had knocked you down, every time you refused to let bitterness take root in a heart that had every reason to grow cold, you were doing what David did in the fields. You were becoming someone capable of carrying what heaven has assigned to your name. And the thing about David that most people miss is that his strength was never primarily physical. Yes, he killed a lion. Yes, he killed a bear. Yes, he walked toward a giant that made trained soldiers run in the opposite direction. But the source of all of that was not muscle. It was not strategy. It was not superior training or military intelligence. The source of David's courage was his intimacy with God. It was the hours he had spent in worship when no one was watching. It was the conversations he had with heaven in the silence of the fields. It was the deep, unshakable knowing in his spirit that he was not alone, that he had never been alone, that the same God who created the stars had also seen fit to place his hand upon the life of a shepherd boy from Bethlehem, who most people had written off before his story had even properly begun. That intimacy, that connection, that deep inner alignment with something eternal, that is what you carry too. You may not always feel it. There are days when the noise of life drowns out the still small voice. There are seasons when the distance between you and heaven feels enormous, when your prayers seem to bounce off the ceiling, when the silence is so thick it almost feels like absence. But silence is not absence, and distance is not disconnection. David knew seasons of feeling utterly forsaken, and he wrote about them with raw honesty in the Psalms. He cried out from the depths. He asked God where he had gone. He wrestled with the gap between the promise he had been given and the reality he was living in. And yet through all of it, he kept turning his face in the right direction. He kept orienting himself toward the source. He kept choosing, even in the dark, to believe that the hand that had anointed him had not withdrawn. That is the posture of a chosen one, not the posture of someone who has everything figured out or who never doubts or who walks through life untouched by pain. The posture of a chosen one is the posture of someone who keeps turning toward God even when turning hurts, who keeps trusting even when trust feels like the most unreasonable option available, who keeps their heart open even when the world has given them every excuse to close it. You have been doing that. In your own way, in your own language, in your own private moments of surrender and choosing and getting back up, you have been doing exactly that. And heaven has seen every single moment of it. Not one tear has gone unnoticed. Not one sleepless night has been wasted. Not one prayer whispered into the dark has fallen to the ground without being received by the one who placed you here on purpose. There is a light in you that the world desperately needs, not the polished performance version of you, not the version of you that has it all together and never struggles. The real you, the you that has been through the fire and still carries warmth, the you that has been through the flood and still offers water to the thirsty, the you that has been misunderstood and rejected and overlooked, and yet somehow, impossibly beautifully, still believes in the goodness of God and the possibility of something better. That version of you, the real, battle-tested, grace-sustained version of you, is exactly what someone in your life is waiting for, exactly what your community needs, exactly what your family has been hoping for without knowing how to ask. Your light is not for you alone. It never was. The anointing on your life has always been about more than your personal comfort or your individual success. It has always carried within it the seeds of impact, the seeds of transformation, the seeds of lives changed and chains broken and hope restored in people who had almost given up on the possibility of restoration. You are a carrier, a conduit, a vessel through which something divine wants to move into the world. And this channel, this space, this community that gathers around these messages is one of the places where that movement happens. If these words have stirred something in you today, if they have touched a place in your heart that needed to be touched, if they have reminded you of something true about yourself that the noise of the world had temporarily buried, then I want to gently ask you to do something. Share this message. Not because a number on a screen matters more than the person it could reach, but because somewhere in your circle there is someone who is sitting in the dark right now, someone who has almost convinced themselves that they are forgotten, that they are too far gone, that their best days are behind them, and this message could be the divine interruption that changes everything for them. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe if you have not already, because there is more coming, and what is coming is going to take you even deeper into the truth of who you are and what you were made for. And if this ministry has blessed your life and you feel led to support what we do here, the link to do that is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every act of generosity, no matter the size, helps this message reach more chosen ones who are still waiting to hear that they are not forgotten. Because that is what this is about. Not numbers, not metrics, people. Real people with real pain and real potential, and a real God who has not given up on a single one of them. You are still here, and that means something. That means the part of you that knows this message is for you, the part that recognized its own name being called in the opening words, the part that has been leaning in closer with every passing minute. That part is awake, and it is hungry for more. And what comes next is not a detour from everything we have been building together. It is an extension of it, because the God who chose you, the God who anointed David in the fields before anyone else could see what he saw, that same God has always been a God who provides. He has always been a God who equips. He has never once called someone to a purpose without also making available to them everything they need to walk that purpose out fully. And today, in this season of your awakening, I want to talk to you about something that sits right at the intersection of science and spirit, right at the place where what heaven designed and what human discovery has uncovered begin to tell the same story. You were created with a mind that is unlike anything else in this universe. The human brain, your brain, is not just a biological organ processing information and regulating your heartbeat. It is a receiver. It is a transmitter. It is a piece of divine engineering so sophisticated that the greatest scientists who have ever lived have spent their entire careers studying it and still only scratched the surface of what it is capable of. And here is what those scientists have been discovering, what the research that has been quietly building for decades is now making undeniable. Your brain operates on frequencies, on waves, on patterns of electrical activity that determine not just how you think, but how you create, how you learn, how you solve problems, how you access the deeper layers of your own intelligence and intuition. And most adults, most people who have been through the grind of life, through stress and pressure and the relentless demands of a world that never seems to slow down, have lost access to the most powerful of those frequencies. Think about how a child thinks. Think about how freely a child imagines, how effortlessly a child learns, how naturally a child lives in a state of wonder and creativity and open possibility. There is a neurological reason for that. Children operate heavily in a brain wave state called theta, a frequency range of 4 to 8 cycles per second, and it is in that state that the deepest creativity, the most accelerated learning, the clearest intuition, and the most powerful mental flow become available, and then life happens. The world puts its demands on us. The stress accumulates, the pressure mounts, and slowly, almost without us noticing, we lose access to that state. We move further and further from the frequency where our greatest mental gifts live, and we wonder why everything feels harder than it used to. Why? Inspiration feels dry. Why focus feels forced. Why the clarity we need seems just out of reach no matter how hard we push for it. But what if the distance between you and that frequency was not permanent? What if the access had not been lost, only temporarily blocked? What if there was a way, a simple, science-backed, non-invasive way to help your brain return to that state, not through years of meditation practice, not through pharmaceutical intervention, not through any complicated protocol that requires special training or equipment, but through something as natural and as accessible as sound? This is where I want to tell you about something called the genius wave. It was developed by a neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers, a man trained at one of the most respected institutions in the world, with more than 30 years of research dedicated to understanding how the human brain works and what it is truly capable of when given the right conditions. His research, informed in part by findings connected to studies conducted with some of the most elite scientific organizations on the planet, led him to a discovery that is as simple as it is profound. The brain can be guided back to its optimal frequency states through precisely engineered sound. Through a technology called brainwave entrainment, using binaural beats and isochronic tones calculated with extraordinary precision. The Genius Wave delivers a 7-minute audio experience that gently guides your brain back into the theta state, and from there opens the door to the higher gamma frequencies associated with peak cognitive performance, breakthrough thinking, and what many describe as moments of pure inspired clarity. 7 minutes, that is all. Not an hour of silent meditation, not a complicated morning ritual. 7 minutes of listening, and your brain begins to do what it was always designed to do. Users report sharper focus, stronger memory, deeper creativity, faster problem solving, reduced anxiety, and a quality of mental clarity that many of them describe as feeling like their mind finally woke up after years of operating in a fog. More than 19,000 people have already experienced this, and the response rate speaks for itself, with a return rate of under 4%, meaning that the overwhelming majority of people who try it find it genuinely, meaningfully valuable in their daily lives. The Genius Wave is available as a digital audio file, meaning there is nothing to install, no device to purchase, no physical product to wait for. You simply access it, put on your headphones, and listen. The regular price is $49, but right now it is available for $39, and it comes with a 90-day full money-back guarantee. If you do not find it valuable, you get every dollar back. No. Questions asked. Because Dr. Rivers is not asking you to take a leap of blind faith. He is asking you to give your brain 7 minutes and see what happens. The official link to access the Genius Wave is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Please be careful of imitation products and unauthorized sources. Only use the official link to ensure you are receiving the genuine, properly calibrated audio. Your mind is too important, and your destiny is too significant to settle for anything less than what was actually designed and tested to work. And here is what I want you to hold on to as we move forward. The fact that this exists, the fact that science has found a way to help restore access to what was always yours, is not a coincidence. It is provision. It is the same God who equipped David with a sling and a stone, who looked at what was available and made it more than enough, doing the same thing for you in the language of your generation. You were created for clarity. You were created for creativity. You were created for the kind of thinking that solves problems and builds things and changes the lives of people around you. And anything that helps you access more of what you were already made with is not a distraction from your calling. It is fuel for it. There is a thread that runs through the life of every person who has ever been chosen for something significant, and that thread is not talent. It is not charisma. It is not even intelligence in the way the world typically measures it. The thread is alignment. It is the invisible but absolutely real quality of being tuned to the right frequency, of having your inner world synchronized with the purpose that heaven placed inside you before you were born. And when you look at David, not just the famous moments but the quiet ones, the ones that did not make the highlight reel of his life, you begin to see that alignment as the secret engine driving everything he accomplished. After Samuel anointed him and he returned to the fields, David did not pace with impatience. He did not spend his days rehearsing speeches for a throne he had not yet been given. He went back to what he knew. He went back to the sheep, to the open sky, to the harp in his hands and the worship rising from his lips into the vast silence of the Judean wilderness. And in that place, in that posture of faithful presence, in the moment he was actually in rather than the moment he was waiting for, something was happening in his inner world that could not be manufactured by ambition or accelerated by striving. He was being formed. He was being tuned. His spirit was being calibrated to carry what was coming. This is the part of David's story that the world tends to rush past because it does not look impressive. It does not make for dramatic cinema. A young man sitting with sheep, playing music, talking to God in the dark. It does not carry the visual weight of a giant falling or a crown being placed on a head. But without those hidden years, without that sustained inner alignment, the visible victories would never have been possible. The giant would have been too big. The throne would have been too heavy. The warfare would have been too relentless. It was in the quiet that David built the inner architecture that made him unbreakable in the public. And you are building that same architecture right now. In your own quiet, in your own fields, in the seasons that feel like nothing is happening, but where everything that matters is actually being constructed inside you at a level deeper than you can currently perceive. The clarity you are developing in this season, the patience you are being stretched into, the faith you are choosing to maintain in the absence of visible evidence, all of it is going into the foundation of something that is going to need to be extraordinarily strong to hold the weight of what is coming for you. Because what is coming for you is not small. I need you to hear that and let it settle somewhere deeper than your surface-level thinking. The assignment attached to your name is not a modest, manageable, safely within the bounds of your current capacity kind of assignment. It is the kind of assignment that requires a version of you that does not yet fully exist. It requires a you that has been stretched and refined, and strengthened and deepened in ways that your comfortable years could never have produced. And so the uncomfortable years, the confusing years, the years that looked like delay and felt like abandonment, those were not punishments. They were requirements. They were the non-negotiable prerequisites for a purpose that demanded a carrier of extraordinary inner strength. David understood this in a way that is captured throughout the Psalms with breathtaking honesty. He did not pretend that the hard seasons were easy. He did not perform a faith that was untouched by doubt or fear or the very human ache of feeling forgotten. He brought all of it to God. He poured it out without editing it first. He said things in his prayers that most religious people would consider too raw, too desperate, too uncomfortably honest for polite spiritual conversation. And that rawness, that willingness to be completely real before God rather than performing a version of faith that looked acceptable from the outside, that was itself a form of alignment. That was itself a form of trust. Because you do not pour out your whole heart to someone you do not actually believe is listening. And God was always listening. The same God who heard every cry David lifted from the wilderness is hearing every cry you have lifted from yours. Not one word you have spoken into the silence of your hardest nights has gone unheard. Not one question you have wrestled with in the dark has been dismissed as irrelevant by the one who placed the capacity for that question inside you in the first place. You have been heard, you are being heard. And the answer, the real answer, the one that goes deeper than changed circumstances and touches the very core of who you are, is already moving in your direction. Psalm 46:10 carries words that have anchored the hearts of chosen ones across centuries of human history. Be still and know that I am God. Not be still and figure everything out. Not be still and manufacture the solution you need. Not be still and perform your way into favor. Simply be still and know. Let the knowing come not from the frantic activity of a mind trying to control outcomes, but from the deep settled place in your spirit where you are connected to something that does not change, does not waver, does not panic, and has never once lost sight of you. That stillness is not passivity. David was the furthest thing from passive. He fought, he led, he built, he created. He went to war and wrote poetry and raised a kingdom and fell and got back up again. But underneath all of that activity, underneath all of that visible, measurable, world-changing output, there was a stillness. There was a center that held. There was a place in him that remained anchored to the knowledge of who God was and therefore who he was in relation to that God. And it was from that place, that deep still knowing place, that everything else flowed. You have access to that same stillness. You were built for it. And the more you choose it, the more you return to it, the more you let it become the ground from which your decisions and your actions and your relationships grow, the more you will begin to experience the kind of clarity and creativity and courage that David walked in. Not because you manufactured those things through discipline alone, but because you stopped straining and started receiving. Because you let the frequency of heaven do what it does in a spirit that is quiet enough to receive it. Your alignment is your greatest asset, not your talent, not your connections, not your resources. Your alignment with the one who chose you, who formed you, who has been faithfully preparing you for an assignment that is greater than anything you have yet imagined. That alignment is the thing that makes everything else possible. Protect it. Cultivate it. Return to it every time life pulls you away from it, because a chosen one who is aligned with their source is the most unstoppable force this world has ever seen. And you, beloved, are that chosen one. Not someday, now, in this season, in this moment, in this exact version of your life that you are living right now, with all of its incompleteness and its questions and its unresolved places, you are already chosen. You are already anointed. You are already carrying something that the world has not yet seen, but that is absolutely, undeniably, irrevocably real. The stillness that David cultivated was not the stillness of someone who had given up on the future. It was the stillness of someone who was so rooted in the present reality of God's nearness that the future did not frighten them. It was the stillness of someone who had learned, through hard and beautiful experience, that the most powerful thing a chosen one can do in a season of waiting is simply to remain. To remain connected, to remain surrendered, to remain soft enough to be shaped and strong enough to endure the shaping. That remaining, that faithful, unhurried, deeply rooted remaining in the presence of the one who called you, is itself an act of warfare against every force that has tried to uproot you from your purpose. You have been remaining. Through everything, you have been remaining. And that remaining has not been invisible to heaven. It has been seen, honored, and stored up as the foundation for everything that is about to be released into your life. The stillness was never the end. It was always the beginning of something that the noise of the world could never have produced in you. And what is being produced in you right now, in this quiet, in this deep place of alignment and trust, is about to become visible in ways that will leave no doubt in anyone's mind, least of all your own, that you were always, from the very beginning, exactly who God said you were. There is a moment in every chosen one's journey where the inner work they have been doing in secret begins to press outward, where the alignment they have been cultivating in the quiet begins to create visible movement in the world around them, where the stillness they have been protecting becomes the launch pad for something so much larger than anything they could have engineered through their own effort and striving. And that moment, that threshold moment where the hidden becomes visible and the prepared becomes released, is closer for you than you have allowed yourself to believe. You have been in the building season. You have been in the forming season. You have been in the season where the work was mostly invisible, mostly internal, mostly happening in the deep places of your spirit where the eyes of the world cannot reach. And that season has been doing exactly what it was designed to do. It has been making you ready, not just capable, but ready. There is a difference. Capable means you have the raw material. Ready means the raw material has been refined to the point where it can bear the weight of what is coming without cracking under the pressure of it. And you are moving from capable to ready in ways that are more significant than you currently have the perspective to see. David moved from capable to ready in the wilderness seasons of his life. After he was anointed king, long before he ever sat on a throne, he spent years running, years hiding in caves, years leading a ragged band of men who were themselves broken and desperate and looking for something to follow. Years of being hunted by the very king he had served faithfully, by the very institution he had given his best to, by the system that should have celebrated him but instead felt threatened by him. And in all of that running, in all of that hiding, in all of that painful, disorienting, seemingly endless season of being pursued rather than promoted, David was being completed. The parts of him that were still rough were being smoothed. The parts of him that were still proud were being humbled. The parts of him that relied on his own strength were being taught to rely on something deeper, something that would not fail him when his own resources ran out. Because that is what the wilderness does for the chosen ones who refuse to become bitter in it. It does not just test you, it transforms you. It does not just delay you, it deepens you. And the depth it produces in you is not a consolation prize for the time you lost. It is the very thing that will make your impact lasting rather than momentary, meaningful rather than merely impressive, rooted rather than just visible. You are coming out of your wilderness. I do not say that as a spiritual platitude or an empty encouragement designed to make you feel temporarily better about a situation that is not actually changing. I say it because the pattern of God's movement in the lives of chosen ones throughout all of human history has always followed a specific arc. Preparation, then release. Hiddenness, then visibility. Forming, then sending. And the signs that someone is approaching the release point of their journey are not always the obvious signs of things getting easier or circumstances dramatically improving overnight. Sometimes the sign is simply a deepening sense of readiness in your spirit, a growing boldness that you cannot fully explain, a restlessness with the smallness of what you have been settling for that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, a knowing, quiet but insistent, that something is about to break open. Do you feel that? Even underneath the weariness, even underneath the questions that are still waiting for answers, even underneath the parts of your situation that have not yet shifted, is there something in you that feels like it is waking up, like it is leaning forward, like it is done waiting and ready to move? If so, honor that. Do not dismiss it as wishful thinking or dangerous optimism. That stirring in your spirit is prophetic. That leaning forward is your inner self responding to a movement in the unseen realm that your natural eyes cannot yet detect, but that your spirit is already tracking. The breakthrough you have been praying for is not sitting still somewhere far away from you, waiting for you to finally be good enough or faithful enough or healed enough to receive it. It is moving. It is in motion. It has already been released from the hand of the God who ordained it, and it is making its way toward you through the circumstances and the connections and the open doors that are even now being prepared ahead of your arrival. You are not waiting for God to start moving. God has already started. You are catching up to what He has already put in motion on your behalf. And this community, this gathering of chosen ones who find their way to these messages not by accident but by divine appointment, is part of that movement. If you have been here for a while, if these messages have become a consistent source of strength and reminder and spiritual anchoring for you in a season that has demanded a lot of your faith, then you already know the value of having a space where the truth of who you are is spoken over you regularly and without apology. And if you are new here, if this is one of the first times you have encountered this community, then welcome. You did not find this place. This place found you because something in heaven decided it was time for you to have access to the kind of truth that is spoken here. If these words are feeding something in you, if they are adding strength to your spirit in a season when strength is exactly what you need, I want to gently invite you to like this video and share it with someone in your life who is in the middle of their own wilderness right now. Someone who needs to hear that their struggle is not evidence of abandonment, but of preparation. Someone who needs to be reminded that the God who chose them has not changed His mind. And if you have not yet subscribed, do that now, because what is coming in the weeks ahead is going to go even deeper into the truth of your identity and your destiny, and you do not want to miss a single moment of it. If this ministry has been a blessing to you, and you feel moved to support the work of reaching more chosen ones with this message, the link to do that is waiting for you in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every contribution, regardless of its size, is an act of partnership in something that is touching lives and shifting destinies across the world. Because that is what you are part of, not just a channel, not just a content community, a movement, a gathering of people who have said yes to the truth of who they are and who are choosing every single day to live from that truth rather than from the lies that the world and the enemy have tried to write over their lives. You belong here. You have always belonged here. And the fact that you are still watching, still listening, still leaning in, is itself a declaration that you are not done, that you are not finished, that the best of what God has placed inside you is still ahead of you, still waiting to be expressed, still gathering momentum in the unseen places where your destiny is being assembled piece by piece with a care and a precision, and a love that surpasses anything you have the capacity to fully comprehend. And that momentum is not slowing down. It is building. Every day that you choose to stay connected to the source, every day that you choose truth over the noise, every day that you show up for the version of your life that God has called you to rather than the diminished version that fear and doubt would have you settle for, you are adding to that momentum. You are contributing to a movement that is larger than any one person and more powerful than any one moment. You are part of something that was set in motion before you were born and that will continue long after your name is spoken for the last time on this earth. That is not a small thing. That is everything. And you, chosen one, are exactly where you are supposed to be. Keep going. You are closer than you think. Keep going. Those two words are not just an encouragement. They are a command from heaven to a spirit that was made to endure, to press forward, to refuse the seduction of giving up when the finish line is not yet visible. And the reason those words carry so much weight in this moment is because what lies ahead of you is not just more of what you have already experienced. What lies ahead is a quality of life, a depth, of impact, a fullness of purpose that your current season, as hard as it has been specifically and intentionally preparing you to step into. And the enemy of your destiny knows this. He has always known this, which is precisely why the resistance you have faced has been so persistent, so personal, so relentlessly aimed at the exact places where your greatest strength lies. Think about this for a moment. You do not fight hard to stop something that poses no threat to you. You do not invest enormous energy in tearing down something that was never going to amount to anything significant. The level of opposition you have faced in your life is not random. It is not bad luck. It is not the universe being indifferent to your well-being. The level of opposition you have faced is proportional to the level of impact that heaven has written into your assignment. The enemy does not waste sophisticated warfare on small targets. And the fact that he has come after you with the particular ferocity and the particular persistence that he has, the fact that he has targeted your mind, your relationships, your confidence, your sense of identity and worth and belonging, tells you something important. It tells you that what you carry is dangerous to darkness. It tells you that the light inside you is not a flicker. It is a flame. And a flame of the magnitude that you carry does not just illuminate a room. It has the potential to set an entire generation on fire with the truth of who God is and what he is capable of doing in a surrendered human life. David knew this kind of targeted opposition. After his anointing, after his victory over Goliath, after his rise to prominence in the courts of Israel, the opposition against him did not decrease. It intensified. Saul, the sitting king, became consumed with a jealousy so irrational, so disproportionate to any real threat David posed, that it drove him to pursue David with an army, to hunt him across the wilderness, to dedicate years of his reign to destroying a young man who had done nothing but serve him faithfully and honorably. And if you had been watching from the outside, if you had seen David running and hiding and sleeping in caves and eating what he could find in the wilderness, you might have drawn the conclusion that he was losing, that the opposition was winning, that the anointing on his life had somehow been canceled by the difficulty of his circumstances. But you would have been wrong, because the opposition was not canceling David's destiny. It was completing his preparation for it. Every cave David hid in was a classroom. Every night he spent trusting God in the dark when he had every natural reason to despair was building a layer of faith in him that could not be built any other way. Every moment he chose not to take matters into his own hands, not to lift his hand against Saul even when he had the perfect opportunity to do so, was developing in him the character of a king who would be able to hold power without being corrupted by it. The opposition was not his enemy. The opposition, as painful and as relentless as it was in a very real sense his training ground. And so it has been for you. The people who misunderstood you were not just obstacles in your story. They were instruments in your formation. The doors that closed were not just disappointments. They were redirections towards something better than what you were asking for. The seasons of silence were not abandonment. They were the necessary quiet in which your spirit was being tuned to a frequency that would make you receptive to what heaven was preparing to release into your life. Nothing has been wasted. Not one moment of pain. Not one experience of loss. Not one season of confusion. All of it has been gathered up by a God who is the master of taking what the enemy meant for destruction and turning it into the very material from which destiny is built. Romans 8:28 does not say that all things feel good. It does not say that all things look good from the inside of them. It says that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. All things, the things that made no sense, the things that broke your heart, the things that you would never have chosen for yourself in 1,000 years, all of it is working. All of it is being woven together by hands that are infinitely more skilled than any human weaver, into a tapestry that will one day be so breathtakingly beautiful that you will look back at even the darkest threads and understand why they were necessary to the wholeness of the picture. You are in the middle of that weaving right now. You cannot see the whole picture from where you stand because you are inside it. You are one of the threads, and threads do not see the tapestry. They only experience the tension of being pulled in directions that sometimes feel uncomfortable, of being placed in proximity to other threads that they did not choose, of going through the needle again and again in a process that requires trust rather than comprehension. But the weaver sees it. The weaver has always seen it, and the weaver is not making something ordinary. The weaver is making something that will outlast you, that will carry your influence and your light forward into generations that have not yet been born. That will be the evidence left behind by a life that was truly and fully surrendered to the purpose it was created for. That is your story, not the story of someone who had it easy, not the story of someone who was spared from difficulty or shielded from pain. The story of someone who went through the fire and came out carrying the fragrance of heaven rather than the smell of smoke. The story of someone who was chosen before the foundation of the world and who, through every season of testing and forming and refining, proved themselves to be exactly the kind of vessel that God knew they would be when He first spoke their name into existence. You are that person. You have always been that person. And the tapestry of your life, even now, even in its incompleteness, is more beautiful than you know. And here is what the enemy does not want you to sit with long enough to fully absorb. The beauty of what God is making out of your life is not contingent on everything going right from this point forward. It is not dependent on a perfect performance or a flawless record or a future free from struggle or setback. The beauty is already present. It is already woven into the parts of your story that you have lived through and survived. It is already embedded in the courage you demonstrated when fear told you to stop. It is already visible in the grace you extended to people who did not deserve it, in the love you kept choosing in seasons when love cost you something real, in the faith you held onto when every natural indicator suggested that faith was foolish. That beauty is not something you have to earn or produce or perform your way into. It is something you already carry. And the more you allow yourself to recognize it, the more you allow yourself to receive the truth that your life, exactly as it has unfolded, has been held in the hands of a God who does not make mistakes, the more you will begin to walk with the kind of settled confidence that David walked with. Not the arrogance of someone who thinks they have figured everything out. The quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows who holds them. Someone who has stood in the dark long enough to know that the dark has never once had the final word. There are people in your future who need the version of you that this season is producing. There are conversations that have not yet happened, relationships that have not yet formed, moments of impact that have not yet arrived, that are going to require exactly the depth and the wisdom and the hard-won compassion that you are carrying right now. The world does not need a version of you that was never tested. It needs the version of you that was tested and did not break, that went through the wilderness and came out still worshiping, that faced the giant and did not run, that sat in the cave and still found reason to praise. That is the version of you that is emerging. That is the version of you that heaven has been so carefully and so intentionally preparing. And that version of you is not far off. That version of you is not some distant future possibility that you have to work for years to finally become. That version of you is right here, right now, in this moment, rising from everything you have already walked through, ready to step into everything that is already on its way. Rising, that is the word that heaven is speaking over your life in this season. Not crawling, not limping, not barely making it to the other side of another hard day with just enough left in you to try again tomorrow. Rising, with the full weight of everything you have survived beneath you as a foundation rather than a burden. With the full force of a purpose that has never been canceled, never been diminished, never been put on hold by anything the enemy has thrown at your life. Rising into the fullness of what you were created for, with a clarity and a confidence, and a fire that the wilderness seasons were always meant to produce in you rather than destroy within you. David rose, after the caves, after the running, after the years of being hunted and misunderstood and underestimated by the very people he had given his best to, after the losses that would have permanently broken a man of lesser spiritual foundation, after the seasons of silence when the promises of God must have felt impossibly distant from the reality he was living in. After all of it, David rose, not because his circumstances suddenly became easy, not because every enemy disappeared overnight and every wound healed without leaving a mark. He rose because the forming was finally complete enough for the releasing to begin, because the depth that had been built in him through the hard years was finally sufficient to carry the weight of the years of fruitfulness that were coming, because the God who had made the promise was faithful to fulfill it in his timing, in his way, with a completeness that exceeded anything David could have designed for himself if he had been the one in control of the process. And that same God, that same faithful, promise-keeping, wilderness-accompanying, cave-sitting with you, never once losing sight of you God, is the God who has been with you through every season of your story. He has not changed. His faithfulness has not wavered. His purpose for your life has not been revised downward to accommodate the difficulty of what you have walked through. If anything, the difficulty has expanded the capacity of the vessel, which means the fullness of what he intends to pour into your life, and through your life into the world is greater now than it would have been if the road had been easier. You are a larger vessel than you were when this journey began. Let that land. Let that actually reach the place inside you where the measuring and the comparing and the self-assessment happens. You are not the same person who entered this season. You are not carrying the same limitations, the same fears, the same unexamined assumptions about what is possible for someone like you. The pressure has expanded you. Fire has purified you. The silence has deepened you. And the you that is standing on the other side of all of that is genuinely, substantively, profoundly more capable of the assignment that heaven has written over your life than the you who first received the anointing for it. This is the moment where I want to ask you to do something. Not a big thing, not a complicated thing, just a simple, honest declaration of where you stand right now in your own story. In the comments below, type the words "I rise." 2 words. That is all. Let it be your agreement with everything that heaven is speaking over you in this moment. Let it be your declaration that you are not done, that you are not defeated, that you are not willing to settle for a version of your life that falls short of the fullness of what you were created for. Type "I rise" and let those 2 words stand as a prophetic act, as a flag planted in the ground of your own destiny, as a declaration that the rising has already begun, even if the evidence is not yet fully visible in your circumstances. Because declarations matter. Words carry weight in the spiritual realm in ways that we often underestimate. David understood this. His psalms were not just poetry. They were declarations. They were the intentional, deliberate act of speaking truth into an atmosphere that was full of lies about who he was and what his future held. He declared the goodness of God in the land of the living when the land of the living was not looking particularly good from where he stood. He declared that the Lord was his shepherd when he was sleeping in caves with an army hunting him. He declared light in the dark. He declared abundance in the wilderness. He declared victory before the battle was finished. And those declarations were not denial of reality. They were the assertion of a higher reality, of a truth that existed in the unseen realm, before it manifested in the visible one. Your declarations carry that same power. Your words, spoken in faith from a heart that is genuinely surrendered to the purpose of God, have the capacity to shift atmospheres, to open doors, to release things in the unseen realm that will eventually show up in your visible circumstances in ways that will take your breath away. This is not mysticism. This is the consistent, documented, scripturally supported pattern of how God has always worked with the people he has chosen. He speaks first, they agree, and then the manifestation follows the agreement. Isaiah 41:10 carries a declaration that has steadied the hearts of chosen ones in their most uncertain moments across centuries of human history. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Read that again, not as religious language, not as a verse you have seen on a greeting card or heard in a church service so many times that it has lost its edge. Read it as a personal, direct, present tense word spoken specifically into your situation right now. Do not fear. Do not feel afraid, because fear is a feeling and feelings are not always subject to immediate command. Do not fear, meaning do not let fear be the thing that governs your decisions, determines your direction, sets the boundaries of what you allow yourself to believe is possible for your life. I am with you. Not I was with you in the seasons when things were going well. Not I will be with you once you get yourself sorted out and your faith is strong enough and your life is in better order. I am with you. Present tense. Right now. In the middle of the mess and the questions and the unresolved places and the dreams that are still waiting for their moment. Right here. Right now. With you. I will strengthen you. Not you need to manufacture your own strength and bring it to me and then I will add to it. I will strengthen you, meaning the strength you need for what is coming is not something you have to produce. It is something you have to receive. And you receive it the same way David received it, by staying connected to the source, by returning to the place of worship and surrender and honest conversation with God even when, especially when, you do not feel like it. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. The hand of God underneath your life is not a metaphor. It is a spiritual reality that is more solid and more certain than anything your natural senses can perceive. And that hand has been underneath you through every moment of this journey, in every season that felt like free fall, in every moment that felt like the ground had disappeared from beneath your feet. You did not fall. You are not falling. You are being held by something that does not lose its grip. That is the foundation from which you rise. Not your own strength, though your strength is real. Not your own wisdom, though your wisdom has been hard-won and genuinely valuable. Not your own record of faithfulness, though your faithfulness has been seen and honored by heaven in ways you will one day fully understand. You rise from the foundation of a God who chose you before you chose him, who has never once reconsidered that choice, and who is right now, in this very moment, holding you with a grip that nothing in this universe has the power to break. Rise, chosen one. The world has been waiting long enough. The world has been waiting long enough. And so have you. You have been waiting for the confirmation that what you feel in your spirit is real. You have been waiting for the sign that the promises spoken over your life were not just beautiful words that evaporated in the air the moment they were spoken, but actual, living, breathing commitments made by a God who does not lie, and does not forget, and does not abandon the work he has begun in a human life simply because that life has become complicated or messy or harder than anyone anticipated. And I want you to know, with every ounce of conviction that this message carries, that what you feel in your spirit is real. The promises are real. The calling is real. The destiny that has been written over your name in the courts of heaven is more real than anything you can touch or see or measure with your natural senses. David waited. This is the part of his story that tends to get compressed in the retelling because waiting is not dramatic and waiting does not make for compelling narrative. But the waiting was real, and it was long, and it was the kind of waiting that tests the very fiber of a person's character and conviction. Between the day Samuel poured oil over his head in his father's house and the day he was finally crowned king over all of Israel, years passed. Not months, years. Years of running, years of hiding, years of leading men in the wilderness while the throne he had been promised sat occupied by someone who had forfeited his right to it but who was not yet removed from it. Years of holding the promise in one hand and the painful reality in the other, and choosing, day after day after day, to believe that the God who made the promise was more reliable than the circumstances that seemed to contradict it. And in those years, in that long wilderness of waiting, David did not grow passive. He did not become resigned or bitter or spiritually dormant. He wrote, he worshiped, he led, he grew. He made mistakes and he repented and he got back up and he kept going. He remained engaged with his life even in the season when his life was not yet what it was promised to become. He was fully present in the fields even when his heart was oriented toward the palace. He gave his whole self to the season he was actually in rather than withholding himself from it, because it was not the season he had been promised. That is the invitation for you right now, to be fully present in the season you are actually in. Not to perform contentment you do not feel, not to pretend that the waiting is easy or that the gap between the promise and the present reality does not ache in ways that are sometimes almost unbearable, but to bring your whole self to this moment, to this season, to this version of your life, because this version of your life is not a waiting room. It is not a placeholder. It is not a less important chapter that you have to endure until the real story begins. This is the real story, right now. And the things that are being developed in you right now, in this season that feels like in between, are not minor details. They are the very substance of the person you are becoming, the very character of the vessel that heaven is preparing to fill with something it cannot pour into a container that has not yet been made ready to hold it. There is a readiness that only comes from waiting well, not waiting passively, not waiting resentfully, not waiting with one eye always on the clock and one foot always pointed toward the exit. Waiting well means staying soft when hardness would be easier, staying open when closing off would be safer, staying faithful in the small things when faithfulness in the small things feels invisible and unrecognized, and utterly thankless, staying connected to the source when the silence of the source feels like indifference. That kind of waiting is not weakness. That kind of waiting is one of the most spiritually demanding and spiritually significant things a human being can do, and you have been doing it. In your own imperfect, sometimes stumbling, always sincere way, you have been doing it. And heaven has been watching. Heaven is always watching the ones who choose to keep trusting in the dark, not with a detached, clinical observation, but with the engaged, invested, deeply personal attention of a father who is watching his child go through something hard and is not unmoved by it, who feels every moment of it, who is not distant from the pain of it, but who also sees what the child cannot yet see from inside the experience, which is that the hard thing is not the end of the story. The hard thing is the making of the story. The hard thing is the chapter without which the ending would not carry its full weight of meaning and beauty and transformative power. Your story is not finished. It is not even close to finished. The chapters that are still ahead of you contain things that the chapters you have already lived could not have prepared you for without everything you have walked through. The connections that are coming, the open doors that are coming, the moments of sudden, breathtaking clarity when everything you have been through suddenly makes complete sense in the light of where you are standing. The relationships that are going to come into your life carrying the exact kind of love and partnership and mutual strengthening that your soul has been longing for. The opportunities that are going to arrive and fit the shape of your gifts and your experience and your hard-won wisdom so precisely that you will know beyond any shadow of doubt that they were not accidents but appointments. All of that is still ahead of you. All of that is written in the chapters that have not yet been lived. And the you that is going to walk into those chapters is not a weakened, diminished, barely surviving version of yourself. It is the full, refined, deepened, battle-tested, grace-sustained, heaven-anointed version of yourself that this entire journey has been producing. It is the you that David became after the wilderness, the you that emerges from the forming season carrying something that the comfortable years could never have produced. Jeremiah 29:11 speaks directly into the place in your heart that has been holding the question of whether any of this is real, whether the promises are still in effect, whether the God who called you still has a plan for your life that is worth holding on for. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. That verse was spoken to people who were in exile, people who were far from home, people who were living in circumstances that looked nothing like the promises they had been given and that felt, from the inside, like evidence that the promises had been revoked. And into that specific context, into that specific pain, God spoke with absolute clarity and absolute certainty. I know the plans, not I am working on the plans. Not I had plans, but your circumstances have complicated them. I know the plans. Past tense knowledge of a future tense reality, meaning the plans are already complete, already certain, already fully formed in the mind of the one who holds your life in his hands. Plans to prosper you, not plans to maintain you at a level of bare sufficiency. Plans to prosper you, to bring you into a fullness and a fruitfulness that goes beyond what survival looks like. Plans to give you hope and a future. Not just a future in the technical sense of more days following these days, but a future that carries with it the quality of hope. A future worth leaning toward. A future worth the cost of the journey it has taken to get here. That is your future, not a diminished version of what you once dreamed, not a consolation prize offered to someone whose real destiny got away from them. The full, intended, specifically designed for you and no one else, version of the life that God planned for you before you were born. And it is not being withheld from you. It is being prepared for you, and you are being prepared for it. Both things are happening simultaneously, right now. in this very season that has felt so much like delay. You are almost there, not in a trite, dismissive way that minimizes how much the journey has cost you, but in the truest, most spiritually substantial sense of the phrase. The forming is nearly complete. The preparation is rounding its final corner. And what is waiting on the other side of this season is going to make every moment of the waiting feel not just worth it, but necessary. Not just survivable, but sacred. Hold on, chosen one. Not with white-knuckled desperation, but with the open-handed trust of someone who knows who is holding them. The best is not behind you. The best, the real best, the fullness of what you were created for and what has been prepared for you is still gloriously, magnificently, undeniably ahead. Still gloriously, magnificently, undeniably ahead. Let those words settle into the deepest part of you. Let them reach past the weariness and the questions and the places that are still tender from the journey you have walked to get here. Let them land in the place where your truest self lives, the part of you that has never fully stopped believing, the part that has kept the flame alive through every wind that tried to extinguish it, the part that showed up for this message today because something in you knew it was time to receive what heaven has been trying to say to you for longer than you realize. That part of you is not naive. It is not foolish. It is prophetic. It is the part of you that is already living in the reality of what God has spoken over your life, already standing in the fullness of the destiny that is still making its way into your visible world, already inhabiting the truth that your circumstances have not yet caught up to, but that is more real than anything your natural eyes can currently see. David arrived. After all of it, after every cave and every battle and every wilderness season, and every moment of agonizing trust in a God whose timing did not match his own, David arrived. He sat on the throne that had been promised to him in a field when he was nobody's first choice. He led a nation. He built a legacy. He wrote songs that have comforted and anchored and ignited the faith of billions of human beings. Across thousands of years of human history, he became, as God called him, a man after God's own heart, not because he was perfect, not because his record was clean or his story was simple or his path was straight, but because through everything, through the victories and the failures and the glories and the devastations, he kept his heart oriented toward the right source. He kept coming back. He kept choosing. He kept believing that the God who had called him had not changed his mind. And you are going to arrive too. That is not wishful thinking. That is not spiritual optimism disconnected from the reality of what you have walked through. That is the declaration of a God who does not begin what he does not intend to complete, who does not call who he does not equip, who does not anoint who he does not sustain through every season required to bring the anointing to its full expression in the world. You are going to arrive, and when you do, when you look back from the place of fulfillment at the road that brought you there, you are going to see it with completely different eyes than the eyes you are seeing it with right now. You are going to see the faithfulness woven through every season that felt like abandonment. You are going to see the preparation hidden inside every season that felt like punishment. You are going to see the love embedded in every closed door, every redirected path, every moment of silence that was not absence but attentiveness, not distance but the focused, intentional nearness of a God who was too invested in the outcome to rush the process. You are going to see it all, and it is going to take your breath away. And in that moment, in that place of arrival and clarity, and the fullness of understanding that only comes from standing on the other side of the journey, you are going to want to turn around and reach back for the person who is still in the middle of their wilderness. You are going to want to be the voice that speaks truth into their darkness, the way this message has spoken truth into yours today. Because that is what chosen ones do when they arrive. They do not close the door behind them. They prop it open. They reach back. They become the evidence that the journey is worth it, that the God who brought them through is faithful, that the promises are real and the calling is sure, and the destiny is not a dream but a destination that every surrendered persistent, faithful chosen one will one day reach. That is your future, and it begins right now, in this moment, with the posture of your heart in response to everything this message has carried for you today. I want to close this time together with a prayer, not a formal, rehearsed, religious recitation, a real conversation with the God who has been present in every word of this message, who orchestrated the moment that brought you here, who has been leaning in close the entire time you have been listening, because He is that invested in you and in what this moment means for your journey. Father, I lift up the one who is hearing this right now. You know exactly who they are. You know the road they have walked to get here. You know the weight they have been carrying and the questions they have been holding and the places in their heart that are still tender and still waiting for your touch. You see them completely, and you love what you see, not in spite of the struggle but through it, because you have. Watch them choose you again and again in seasons when choosing you cost them something real. I ask you right now to let them feel your presence in a way that goes beyond emotion, in a way that anchors itself in the deepest part of their spirit and does not leave when this video ends. Let them carry something out of this moment that changes the way they see themselves and the way they see their story and the way they walk into tomorrow. Confirm in their spirit the truth of who they are. Quiet every voice that has spoken less than your truth over their life, and release into their path, in your perfect timing and your perfect way, every promise that has been spoken over them that has not yet manifested in the visible world. Let this be the turning point. Let this be the moment they look back on and say, that was the day. Something shifted. That was the day I stopped agreeing with the lies and started agreeing with heaven. That was the day I finally understood who I really am. In your name, with your authority, by your grace. Amen. Chosen one, you came into this message carrying something, and I believe you are leaving it carrying something different, something heavier in the best possible way. The weight of a truth that has settled into you, a truth that is going to keep working in you long after this video ends, long after today becomes tomorrow, and this season becomes the one you look back on as the turning point of your life. You are not ordinary. You were never ordinary. You are chosen, called, anointed, equipped, sustained, and deeply, irreversibly loved by a God who has never once taken His eyes off you. You carry a light that the world is waiting for. You carry a story that someone else needs to hear. You carry a destiny that has not yet reached its fullness but that is moving, right now, with a momentum that nothing formed against. You has the power to stop. If this message has stirred something in you today, if it has blessed you, strengthened you, reminded you of something true that you needed to hear, I want to gently ask you to like this video and share it with someone who needs it right now. Someone in their own wilderness. Someone who has almost convinced themselves that they are forgotten. Your simple act of sharing could be the divine interruption that changes everything for them. Subscribe if you have not already, because this journey continues, and what is coming is going to take you even deeper into the truth of your identity and your destiny. And if you feel led to support this ministry and help us reach more chosen ones around the world with this message, the link to do that is in the description and in the pinned comment below. Every act of generosity is an act of partnership in something that is genuinely touching lives and shifting destinies. You are not here by accident. You never were. And everything that is ahead of you is worth every step of the road it took to get here. Go, chosen one. The world has been waiting for you. And now, finally, gloriously, it is your time.